Good morning. So we're going to finish up our study of Obadiah today. On day 1, we talked about the history of Esau and the land of Edom. And on 2, we talked about, we started in Obadiah verses 1 through 9, Obadiah's prediction about what will happen. And in verses 10 through 14 on day 3, we talked about the denunciation of Edom, why it will happen. And today we're going to look at verses 15 through 21 of Obadiah on the consummation, on how it will happen. So what will happen, why it will happen, and today is how it will happen. So if you read verses 15 through 16, it talks about verse 15, the day of the Lord is near for all nations. So the day of the Lord is the Lord's glorious victory over his enemies. And that can be for this particular situation in Obadiah, or it can be the end of time. And it may actually also, the day of the Lord may be several different events, depending on which scholars you want to read. And then it goes on to say, as you have done, it will be done to you. And in 2 Corinthians 5:10, that says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive what is due him for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. So we all will be judged. And this is just saying that, yes, Edom will be judged as everyone else will. Verse 16, so they drank on the holy mountain. The holy mountain is the mountain of Zion, and Jerusalem is built on 4 mountains, and one of those is Zion. And they will drink, and it'll be as if they've never been. So the drunkenness of Israel's enemies as Babylon celebrates it. So Babylon takes over Jerusalem, and so they're all just drunk. They have big drunken parties. They're so excited, but they're just going to drink themselves into oblivion. They're just literally oblivion till they no longer exist. And then verses 17 through 21 are the deliverance of Israel. So verse 17, Mount Zion will be delivered and it will be holy. This is Mount Zion. But some scholars think that this might be the New Jerusalem from the book of Revelations. It says the house of Jacob will be a fire and the house of Joseph a flame. So again, there's many different ways you can read this. It could either be the actual 12 tribes of Israel, or it could be the true Israel per Romans 11:17-22, where it talks about how we as Christians are grafted into Israel. So depending on how you want to look at it, it could either be the 12 tribes, or it could be the whole Christian nation along with Israel. And they'll possess their inheritance. So again, this can be the land, the promised land that they'll possess, or it could be the mercies and blessings of God. Verse 18 talks about the destruction of Edom, and there just won't be any survivors. And verse 19 is an interesting verse. It talks about a lot of geography here, where the Israelites will control these heathen nations that are around them. So the people of the Negev will occupy Edom. So these are the people just west of Edom. If you want to look up these other places, if you're into geography, I thought it was kind of interesting where these people are coming from to take over the lands that God will give to other people. That God will give to the Israelites. Verse 20, it talks about the exiles, the captives of Babylonia, or this could be the captives of sin. So you can read this very literally, or you can read it knowing that we are captives, that we're going to be given God's mercy, very spiritually minded. Luke 4:18 says, Jesus said, the Holy Spirit sent me to proclaim the release of the captives. So it could be a spiritual release. And then verse 21, the last verse says, deliverers will go up on Mount Zion to govern the mountains of Esau. So this might be the Messiah, but it could just be future leaders that are Jewish and Israelites to govern that again. And the last verse, and the kingdom will be the Lord's. The story as it happens. So we learned about Esau and Edom's history and what will happen, why it will happen, and how it will happen. And so as of today, what's the end of the story? The end of the story is that under Babylonian rule, so actually Edom was taken over by Babylonia before Jerusalem was destroyed. And they were not destroyed, but they were made a Babylonian province called Idumea. And that's Idumea, Idumea. And after they're set up as a province, a Babylonian province, but still flourishing, after that Jerusalem was captured. And if you remember at the beginning, we talked about nobody's really sure when Obadiah was written, but if it was written, it was probably sometime in this period before Jerusalem. If it was written at the later date, it was written before Jerusalem was captured by the Babylonians. So during the Greek rule of Alexander the Great, there's no mention of Idumea or Edom. In the 2nd century before Christ, there was a guy named John Hyrcanus who was Jewish, and he forced Judaism on the Idumeans and had them all converted, whether they wanted to be or not. I don't know what that proves, but he did. And then even as late as the New Testament in Mark 3:8, it mentions that people from many regions, including Idumea, came to see Jesus. So it was still a province. There were still people there. But in AD 70, the Romans utterly destroyed Idumea. There's no mention of the people after that. As late as 400 AD, there is mention of the region, but there's never any mention of the people after that. So Obadiah's prophecy came true. I would like to recommend that you go back and read the whole big fat book of Obadiah, all 21 verses in the Message. It's very meaningful. I hope you've enjoyed this series. I think next we might do Jonah. Have a great day.